Good evening, everybody. This is Eric Foster, co-founder of the Future Today and Tomorrow Super PAC. I'm speaking to you in part from the Super PAC, but also with respect to the Changemaker Initiative, which has been a activity that I've been heavily involved in over the past few months with a number of stakeholder organizations like the National Association of Black Cannabis Lawyers, Minorities for Medical Marijuana, Cannabis Capital, LLC, Holdings LLC, and others with respect to changing the approach to the cannabis and hemp industry, where we need to focus on changing who the elected officials are so that we can change our regulatory environment and change our future. Ergo, what we've been doing over the past 20 years with respect to a mix of indiscriminate expenditures on lobbying with not a unified or focused approach, with state ballot campaign initiatives, either for or against or to prevent limitation of certain things, then also direct contributions to state and federal candidates, but not having a coordinated activity has left us in a position where the cannabis industry and the hemp industry are basically one tweet or truth social post from obliteration based on things that are happening at the federal government and also a regression of stuff happening at state governments. But today, I want to talk a little bit about something that people inside the industry are getting all excited about. And I want to pump everybody's brakes because it's not what you think. And we don't have time here for y'all to be Charlie Brown thinking that Lucy's going to finally let you kick that football. Look, I don't know if y'all watch Charlie Brown. I watched it as a kid. I loved the Happy Thanksgiving Charlie Brown. It's the Great Pumpkin Charlie Brown. Merry Christmas Charlie Brown. Hell, I even love the Arbor Day and Flag Day Charlie Brown. But one of the most endearing dynamics of Charlie Brown is not just his optimism, but also sometimes his inability to accept objective reality. Lucy in the football. Lucy ain't never gonna let that boy kick that football, but every single time that it's in front of him, he gets excited and runs up thinking, this is gonna be the year I'm gonna kick that football. And she always pulls it away. Right now, the cannabis and hemp industries are both going through Charlie Brown Groundhog Day with Lucy and the football. Today's video is going to kind of discuss what's going on in the state of Texas, where everything is bigger, a lot of people say, and also the football that's enticing the Charlie Brown of it all is definitely bigger. And there's two key things that have happened. First off, the Texas House and Senate passed HB 46. Now, HB 46 takes the bare minimum of a low THC oil medical cannabis program that Texas has and turns it into a slightly less limited medical marijuana program with additional applications of products that can be developed, also additional qualifying conditions, opening it up potentially to more patients who could apply for medical marijuana cards and working with both a prescribing physician and their traditional primary care physician, and some additional licenses. Now, here's the rub. So, this is the Charlie v. football moment. One of the problems with this particular piece of legislation that I just want to bring everybody else to, so that you all have an understanding of what is going on. The bill in itself is not going to, well, now it's law because Governor Abbott signed it, but the law is not going to really create a true medical cannabis marketplace. It just isn't. So, a little bit of background. The current compassion use program in Texas, eligibility is only if you meet a specific number of categories of diseases, including seizure disorders, multiple sclerosis, muscle spasticity, amyotrophic lateral or ALS, I'm sorry, autism, terminal cancer, and incurable neurological degenerative diseases. You could get your card if you were a Texas resident and if you were received a prescription from a registered compassionate care program physician. And then you could go to one of three dispensary locations throughout the state to buy your low THC oil cannabis. So zero, less than 0%. Now, this bill, which a lot of people are running around thinking, ooh, this opens up new opportunities for us. It's not really that, because here's what happens. So, first, yes, more conditions are going to be opened up, including chronic pain, traumatic brain injuries, as well as additional terminal illnesses for patients in hospice and palliative care. They're going to open up now 12 additional vertically integrated licenses. Think of it like this. Remember in the old days with Ford, GM, and Chrysler, where they not only built the car, but they also owned the parts manufacturers, so all of their tier companies that did the parts that went up the supply chain to the final manufacturing facility. And they also managed in-house and owned all of the engineering and research and development companies that helped with the design and research and engineering to make sure that the product was safe and appealing and all of that. Now, you right now the automotive industry is very decentralized, where Ford, GM, Chrysler, Toyota, Honda, and other car companies, they don't control those other supply chain pieces. But in the cannabis industry, which I liken a lot to, depending on the state, either a integrated or decentralized automotive industry model, Texas is one of those centralized models, like back in the old days. So cultivation, testing, product development and research, processing and manufacturing of aftermarket products. So your edibles or other things that can be legally created in Texas. And then your retail is all currently handled through three licensees in integrated facilities. This now will open it up to 15, so 12 new licenses. But once again, it's a vertically integrated operation. So imagine your Ford, GM, and Chrysler. Y'all might not remember, but there used to be other American automotive companies before Tesla came in. There used to be American Motors Corporation. There used to be Studebaker. There used to be Tucker. Those companies, so imagine if right now you're trying to enter the automotive market and you want to get with some of your friends, maybe some of your family members, and you think, look, Texas is opening up, so let's go get a license. Yeah, you're not scaled like Ford, GM, and Chrysler, so you're not about to be the next American Motors, the big four, or Studebaker, the big five. It's just not going to happen. And actually, Studebaker did merge with some other companies. I think it was, I'm going off of memory, so I'm going to let it pass. But Studebaker merged with some others to make AMC. So for a while, it was the big four. But I digress. So that's the situation in Texas. These additional 12 licenses are not going to open up opportunity for more people to get in the industry. Another example of how this fits is this is the beer baron industry, where the big beer barons controlled everything that was happening in alcohol and beverages after prohibition with beer. So it's another type of model where there's limited opportunities for ownership. But also, they're going to set up satellite storage facilities. So, once again, kind of using automotive or the beer industry as a model, you have these logistical hubs that will allow them to service a larger geographical footprint. However, it doesn't open up any individual or independent licenses. Now, there is going to be additional product opportunities, and there's going to be, now, this is where I think some people have missed the understanding. There's new delivery methods for the products. Now, some states like Massachusetts or Colorado, they have individual delivery licenses where you can start a cannabis business to be a delivery licensed business, like a legal cannabis Uber. Well, I think people are misreading that because they're not talking about delivery licensing. When they say new delivery methods, they're talking about new ways for you to use the cannabis. So you can use vapes, you can use inhalers, nasal sprays. That's the delivery model that they're talking about. Probably not the best language to use, but it is the language that we have. And so ultimately, this is not something that's really opening it up. So while people are excited and running around thinking, oh, wow, we finally got Texas as the 40th state, you really don't have Texas as the 40th state. Basically, Acme is just going to set up a couple of subsidiaries. They're still selling to the Coyote, but they now just have a couple of other subsidiaries to sell to the Coyote. So the Coyote doesn't have to think that he's just buying from Acme directly and getting all those failed products and never let him catch the Roadrunner. So I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but truth needs to be told. Texas is not giving you an expanded medical market from a business and commercial vantage point, and it's not really, while there's some increase of access for patients, it's not really a true expansive medically focused market. Now, separately, SB3, the bill that would ban hemp, for our brothers and sisters on the hemp side of the world, that bill was a death nail to the hemp industry, but it passed with decent margins in the Texas House, Texas Senate. It's championed by the Lieutenant Governor, Dan Patrick, not ESPN former Dan Patrick. I wish it was, but because trust me, he'd be a much better human being than this Dan Patrick, but Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor. In Texas, the lieutenant governor has a shitload of power because of the way the Constitution is written. While the governor has some of the executive authority, it's shared with the lieutenant governor, and the lieutenant governor basically is the quarterback of the legislature. So the lieutenant governor has as much power in the legislature as the Speaker of the House, where at a federal level and in most states, the president of the Senate is the vice president or lieutenant governor, but they really just are a tie breaking vote. They don't have really legislative power. In Texas, he does. So that's a quirk. But the governor vetoed at the last minute SB3. And while vetoing SB3, he's asked the legislature to come back in July to try to create a new bill. And basically, what he wants a ban light version because he's concerned about Arkansas's SB, well, Senate bill. When I use SB or HB, I mean Senate bill or House bill. So, Arkansas Senate Bill 358. That bill was passed in 2013, but was caught up in court in the case of Biogen LLC versus Sanders 69 690. I'll get the other acronyms I can post because there'll be a companion article that goes along with this. But the law was rendered moot by the federal court because the way it was written, it went too far and it violated the supremacy clause, which federal law legalizing hemp products basically said that they were going too far. They were going beyond federal authority in Arkansas SB 358. So, in his 4-page veto message, because when legislation is passed by the legislative body, including Congress, and it's vetoed by the executive, they usually write a reason why. Most of the time, it gives detail and it hopefully gives prescription for additional actions that they would like the legislative body to do to try to either fix it or don't bring this back to my house. It's kind of like, boy, don't bring that girl back to my house again. I don't want to see her no more if you got kids and they're dating somebody you don't really like. So in this instance, that's not what's happening. In this instance, he's saying, you know, go clean her up and get her nice dress and get her hair done, a couple other things, and bring her back, and then we'll see what we can do. In a sense, he wants the bill back. He wants the intent of most of the provisions, but he wants to be able to meet the the legality test, the supremacy clause test that they failed in Arkansas. He wants to be able to ensure that Texas can meet that burden when it gets challenged in the judicial system. And basically, it's a preemption clause. So, supremacy clause, another way to look at it is preemption. And preemption is when you got too big for your britches and you have to stay in your lane. So, what he wants the legislature to do, and this is just some of the things that he wants in a revised bill in July of 2025 for them to work on. He wants to, of course, include prohibiting selling THC product to minors that's punishable by crime, prohibiting sales near schools, churches, parks, and areas filled by children. Yes. Any store selling to anyone must have a permit and be registered with the state, and there's penalties if you sell to anyone that's under the age of 21 or if you don't have a permit. The THC can't have any psychoactive properties, so it can't be mixed with alcohol, can't be mixed with tobacco, can't be mixed with kratom. It's got to be overly tested from beginning to end. So from the rooter to the tutor. So from when it starts off as a little baby plant all the way through to when it becomes a mature plant ready to go into plant college, I mean processing, to create the additional products that come from the CBD related products, among a number of other provisions, including felony offenses for false lab test or messing with the manifest for transportation or for labeling related issues, public consumption in vehicles or open containers in vehicles. Ultimately, it's very similar to what was already in SB3. And so you would be taking a multi-billion-dollar industry and basically you are legislating it to death. So why are people excited? Because Greg Abbott vetoed it, which the legislature, I'm sure, is not happy. Dan Patrick, the lieutenant governor, damn sure ain't happy. So what's the problem? So the problem that we're facing is this in a nutshell. When they come back in July, you're going to get something that's very similar, maybe with some regulatory burdens that are lessened so that you don't run afoul of the preemption and supremacy clauses if challenged in court. The problem for the industry is if they can find and meet that threshold and it can survive legal challenge, the industry is going to be effectively neutered. It's going to have the life force taken out of it. It's going to be put in carbonite and shipped to Yoda on Tatooine, not Yoda, I'm sorry, shipped to Jabba the Hutt on Tatooine. That's not what the industry needs. The industry needs an opportunity to have a regulatory scheme that is structured, that has safety and health provided to it, but also still allows for it to grow and prosper. So all of this ties back into the Changemaker initiative because ultimately HB 46 and the veto and the SB3 are nothing to celebrate because you're still in the same shithole. The industries need to work together and work with our initiative to start changing the lawmakers. We need to start firing members of the Texas House and Senate who supported SB3 and who pushed through the, for all intents and purposes, a weak, ineffective medical cannabis bill that's become law, but is really not an industry game changer. It's really just prohibition with weekend furlough. That's a good way of putting it. It's basically they're putting medical cannabis in the halfway house. So instead of it being able to get visitation in prison, now it's in the halfway house and it gets to go on work release, but it's still not free. It still doesn't have the same access and structure as other industries do. And it's not good for patients. It's not good for minority entrepreneurs who may want to go into this. It's not good for the supply chain because you're not going to open up new opportunities for vendors to be within the supply chain. This is basically bullshit. So, if you want to change what's happening, you've got to start changing the elected officials. 2026 is a good start to start targeting and working together through the initiative to start changing not only members in Congress so that you can start moving the needle there, but start changing members in the Texas legislature and start changing some of those MAGA controlled elected officials at the state level, like Ken Paxton and others. So you can start to actually create the conditions for a regulatory environment that gives real chance, real opportunity, and is inclusive and restorative in its economic approach and principles. That's what we're trying to do here at the Changemaker Initiative. If you're interested in joining or finding out how to be a part or helping, you can reach me at eric@futurepack.today or at the future today and tomorrow slash changemaker. I'm sorry, it's a little late out here in the East Coast where I'm at posting this, but I'll have all of the links for you to get additional information, to find out ways to connect with us and join with us because we have to start changing this. This is not healthy. This is not a good relationship. This is a toxic relationship. All that the industry gave was, all that the state legislature gave was work release in a halfway house for cannabis and a parole, well, not even a parole, a release from custody with the possibility of rearresting the hemp industry. None of this is good. None of this is sustainable, and we must work together to change this. And how do we do that? We do that by shifting the approach, change the lawmakers, change our regulatory structure, change our future. That's what the change maker is. So don't let people play in your face and accept less. Texas gave less to both cannabis and hemp. Vetoing SB3 is nice, but it's still bad in terms of what can come after. And HB 46 is not a real industry. It's released to the halfway house with a work release program, but you're still under state confinement. Do we deserve better? Yes. But the only way to get better is to stop hoping that somebody will finally like you in these legislative bodies, that if we just keep talking to them and going up and communicating and lobbying and telling good stories, that eventually they'll like us. They will not like you. They just don't. So let's fire them and get people elected who will like us. Thank you, everybody. Have a blessed evening.